Hi, in this video, we'll take a look at Axway Amplify Fusion's monitor module and how the transactions that it displays can be useful for debugging. So there are three modules in Amplify Fusion, and the monitor module is for monitoring how your integrations are performing through an interactive dashboard. So if I click on the monitor, I'll come to the dashboard. You can see integration executions by status for the last week, by event. So I could see some SFTP server integrations, some MCP servers, a bunch of API, and Amazon SQS event listeners. And I also see the last few transactions here. I can come here to the transactions tab and see all my transactions for at least the last 7 days. I think they're stored on the control plane. And this is basically a high-level list of all the transactions. And this information is always stored for you for 7 days. And you can filter through by project. And these are all multi-select. You can filter by integration. This, of course, will be a subset of integrations based on projects that are selected. You can look for certain transaction IDs, date ranges. You can filter by control plane. So very powerful filtering for searching for transactions. And again, you can also page through here, and you'll notice that some of the transactions are clickable and some are not. And the ones that are not clickable, I think if I come to API transactions, you'll see that that's because they're proxies. So proxies you cannot click in, but other transactions you can click in and see some details depending on configuration. And what do we see in the transaction list? So you see the status, you see the project for the integration that ran, the actual integration name, the start and end time, as well as the process time, data plane, runtime, and the trigger. Was it an event or was it manually triggered? If we look at API transactions, we can also see the status code, the application name, the method, the URI, the source IP address, and then the same information. And for MCP transactions, we'll see MCP specific information, like what was the operation. Here's a tool list call, here's a tool call. And then again, you get the tool name, the integration name that's linked to the tool, the application, if it's secured, and then start and end time, etc. And again, you can filter all this. You can download this a filtered list of transactions or all your transactions, so you can take a look at that data. And if you've enabled audits and payloads, then when we click into a transaction, we'll actually see a lot more detail. So we can actually see the execution of components, and down here, the step audits. Down here, I can drill in, and I can trace through my integration execution, and I can see what steps ran. And I can also come in here and I can look at the inputs for a particular component. So what parameters were being passed in and what data actually was returned. So this is the payload information. And this is very useful for debugging. So if something doesn't work, you can kind of figure out, what each variable's value was at each step in your integration. Now, in order to get these payloads, which, by the way, are stored on the data plane. So the control plane has your list of transactions. When you click on a transaction, then the payload associated is retrieved from the data plane. And on the data plane, it's stored in the Kubernetes, EFS file system. So it's retrieved and displayed to the developer so they can debug their integration. But in order to have that, you need to configure it in the environment. So if I go to the manager and go to environment and click on details, you can see here that I have enabled the step audits, and I've also enabled payloads and logs. And logs are another thing you can download from the monitor. But it has to be enabled in the environment. And that can be overridden on dedicated data planes. That can be overridden at the data plane level. So if I want, I can override the properties and I can enable audits if they're disabled in the environment. And I can enable payloads or payloads only on failure and logs. But again, that's overriding the environment settings. And regardless of those settings, when I go and activate an integration, I also have the ability to do a final override of the environment and or data plane override, so that I can configure the audits, payloads on failure, or logs. So in this video, we took a brief look at the monitor module and how transactions and audits and payloads can be used to debug integrations, or monitor the integration processing time, etc. And we also discovered that transaction list is stored in the control plane for 7 days, and the actual payload information is stored on the file system and retrieved when you click on the transaction and view its details. Thank you.